Rick Meredith was born in Flint, Michigan. We are both Michiganders. He moved to California while serving in the U.S. Navy. After college, he worked as a marine scientist and wildlife biologist for the federal government and in the private sector. His first novel, Skydance, was based on his environmental work in the oil fields of Ecuador. His current release, The Crow's Nest, was recently featured as a Capital Crimes Book Club Book of the Month, drawing heavily on his work aboard commercial tuna. What is that? Signers? Is that? It's Seiners. Okay. That's actually that's a new word for me. And marine research vessels in the Pacific Ocean. It won the Silver Falchion Award for Best Action Adventure Novel at Killer Nashville 2021. And Rick probably got the Best Acceptance Speech award at that as well. I remember him texting me saying, I can't believe this happened to me. When not writing, he enjoys travel, bird and wildlife watching, bird watching. There you go. That's a modern Alan Alda type man for you. And he likes scuba diving, guitars, and rock concerts, as well as sports. RichardWMeredith.com is his website. And today we're going to be showing you a little bit about The Crow's Nest.
Imagine trapped in a crude submarine 50 feet below the surface and hundreds of miles from shore. And your only companions? A crafty smuggler and 10 tons of cocaine stolen from a ruthless drug lord. Chase Brenner is having second thoughts about Johnny's plan, but it better work, or his family is toast. Chase, the commercial fisherman, barely escapes death after his boat and his crew are destroyed by the Baja cartel, which is hell-bent on eliminating all witnesses to its unique drug smuggling operation. After surviving an arduous voyage in a flimsy boat, he is on the trail for answers and maybe a little retribution. Chase rescues Johnny LeBeau, a Louisiana shrimper forced into smuggling by the cartel, but now on its hit list after he's suspected of skimming. Now, both Johnny and Chase are in the cartel's crosshairs. In a desperate gambit, Chase and Johnny hijack a narco submarine with 10 tons of cocaine. The secrecy of the cartel's billion-dollar enterprise hinges on silencing this dubious pair of extortionists. Johnny, though, proves he is as cunning as the cartel's most savage sicario. But the cartel plays its trump card and Johnny faces the moral dilemma of his life. Ditch Chase, the man who saved him from sure death, and escape with riches beyond his wildest dreams, or lose it all, and maybe his life, to ransom Chase's wife and children after they're kidnapped by the cartel.
So, Rick, are all your stories autobiographical?
Just the cartel parts.
That is one powerful trailer. I could see that showing in a movie theater. Another iMovie production?
It was. That was a lot of fun. I like doing that. Can't wait for the next one.
Literary cocaine. There's so many great words that you put in there as well. Tell us about your process. How did you create this story?
Well, that's one of those things where the story kind of created itself. You know, I watched a documentary one time on these crude submarines that the cartels used to ship the cocaine from South America to California, and I thought, having been on a boat myself a couple of times, I thought, can you imagine how miserable it would be in one of those things, cooped up for 2 weeks? And from there, the kind of story just kind of told itself.
They do, don't they? I mean,
Yeah.
This is your second outing?
Second novel.
And was the second one easier to write than the first?
You know, I think it was, because I think I already had the storyline came to me, and then I just kind of enhanced it, you know. But I think so, yeah. And of course, you get so much experience with that first one. You know, you learn more from your mistakes than your successes, and I've learned a lot.
Part of what Dan Brown says is that you have to start each chapter with a little character study and then immediately throw a hand grenade into their lap and leave it with a cliffhanger. You seem to have pulled that off in almost every chapter of The Crow's Nest. How did you do it?
I don't know. I think that's one of those things that, you either want it to end, something that's ironic, funny, or a, cliffhanger of danger. And I try to do that. I got that hint a long time ago, and yeah.
So how do you know when you're in the zone?
When you can pick it up the next day and say, well, that's okay. And some of the other times you're going, well, that was the worst thing I've ever written in my life. So I think I'm in the zone. I know the zone after the fact.
And when it's all done and you start the process to publication, what are some of those steps? How do you determine whether or not it's ready for prime time?
I think my beta readers do that, and I send it out for reviews, and I listen to what people say. In fact, you were gracious enough to read my last one, and you told me the parts that are flat, and you were absolutely right. So it took a rewrite.
That's tough, isn't it? Because it's like saying your baby's ugly.
Well, it's all right, but some of them are. you gotta have a thick skin. That's it. Because reviewers only make you better.
So how did a science guy become an author?
Well, I think it's because of science. I had to write all the time, but it was very, boring, technical. And, every day I was writing, but it was just not much fun. No adjectives, just no color at all. And this was kind of something to pepper my life a little bit, and I kind of, it made writing a little more enjoyable. But I always slip into that old stuff too, third person and, very objective.
There are no rules.
Yeah.
You say there are rules, but there are no rules.
Guidelines.
What do your readers say they like best about your writing style?
I think they like the action. There's always something going on. I try not to overdo it, but I think they like the action scenes. And I think they like some of the characters.
Well, people have said that you're very good at authenticity. When you're describing action, it's the way it actually happens. How do you research that?
I don't know. I think it's just I sit here and it just comes to me. You're right. I've seen something in a movie, or I've seen something, and it just how do you describe that in detail? I think I break it down into little component parts and put it all together.
Had you written fiction before? Because even when I read your first one, it sounded like somebody who'd been doing this for a while.
No, I actually only had one English class all through college. And, so anytime I was writing, it was something technical. So it was just, I think I read a lot, and I'm an in-genre reader. More and more, I'm an in-club reader, but I'm an in-genre reader, and that's the stuff I like, so it was a natural progression to try to write it.
What's next for Rick Meredith?
Well, I was just telling Sarah and Karen that I just heard from my publisher. My next one's coming out October 25th. So that's up and coming. And so I'm looking forward to that. And that's the next big step.
Do they get easier to write or harder?
Well, I'm trying a series now, and that's a little more difficult because what you read was the second in the series. And the problem I was having with that was when you talked about my character was flat. Well, all his description was in the first book. And the trick is have enough of that in the second and third books that they, who you're talking about, the character traits come through. So I'm having to, have that thread weave through all three novels. And that's the hard part. And keep the characters.
Give us a little peek into the next one. What's its title and what's it about?
Well, just so happens, it's called Maskirovka, the Russian Art of Deception. And it's about this Russian oligarch that's funding money into U.S. campaigns. And my protagonist is a young San Francisco detective who suffers greatly from social anxiety disorder. And somehow he gets on the trail of this, and it becomes a little adventure for him.
How do you pick the flaws for your main characters? Because they all have very interesting obstacles in their way.
I've known people that have suffered from those conditions, and it's one of those things where that person really has that, or depression, or you wouldn't know it talking to them until they get into their situation. They say, oh my gosh, sometimes it's hard to relate to that, but then you think all the hardships they have to go through dealing with that in just a normal part of life. So make it more difficult, make them a cop. They've got to confront people and they can't stand being around people. So,
Right.
give them another, it's got to be, they've got to have an internal conflict, a couple of external conflicts, and then interpersonal relationship conflicts at work. So you got to have them hit at all sides.
And Colleen was saying when I came back from VoucherCon, she's saying, you got COVID because you probably hugged 1,300 people during the last week. And I said, no, it's because I had to be an extrovert for 4 days straight.
Yeah.
That does open you up to making interesting decisions.
Yeah.
RichardWMeredith.com is the website. Rick, thanks so much for
Thank you,
doing
Jerry.
double duty this week.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, I'm getting overexposed. I love it.